Hello, and welcome to the Next Up with NAMIC St. Louis. I'm your host, Alvin Jordan, co-programming chair of NAMIC St. Louis. On this podcast, we're here to explore the stories, experiences, and insights of dynamic professionals making strides in their career. We'll be speaking with those who are on the journey of growth and advancement, rising stars who are not yet vice presidents, but are making real impact in their fields. Our goal is to inspire, inform, and connect you with incredible talent shaping the future of the communications industry. Thank you for joining us today. Let's dive into our first guest. Today's guest has over 20 years of management experience. He currently holds the position of Senior Network Operations Center Manager. He's an entrepreneur and the current Vice President of NAMIC St. Louis from the Bourbon City, Mr. Elgin Thomas. Elgin, welcome to the program.
Wow, thanks for having me. That was a great introduction. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Hey, not a problem. This is one of those things where, we just had to do it, and we thank you for being the first guest for this podcast.
Excited to be here. And like you said, this has been a long time coming. We got to stop to really give a shout out to Will, who's kind of working behind the scenes on this and spearheading, doing a lot of heavy lifting. I'm just here to answer questions. Alvin's here to answer them. Will's definitely been doing some things in the background to kind of get this together, and it's a long time coming. So definitely glad that we're here. I'm excited about the opportunity, and hopefully we can inspire some people and people tap in and listen to what we got to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's incredible talent behind the mics. And yeah, big shout out to Will for coming up with the idea and doing all the technical stuff in the background. So much appreciated.
Yeah,
So
for those that don't know, Will is our technical and marketing person within the NAMIC St. Louis chapter. So if you get any emails, you see some updates on the website, with those social media blasts, that's all Will behind the scenes. So we appreciate what Will does.
yep, for sure, for sure. So let's get into it. All right. So first up, what led you to the communications industry and what was your first job?
Whew. What led me to the communications industry? That was a long journey, and kind of when I think of it, it makes me go back to being fresh out of high school. I attended a HBCU straight out of high school. Um, Remarkable experience. Had a great time. Met some lifelong friends. Um, but those great times super exceeded my classroom times. So uh, being that time, after the first year, I kind of decided, especially, at that time, I wasn't fortunate enough to have a scholarship or my tuition be paid for. At the end of the day, my tuition was coming out of my pockets. So I kind of quickly decided that 4 years of this may not be in my best interest. And I know during that time, there were a lot of what they call technical colleges to where, you can get a degree in a shorter period of time over something specialized. And I would say um, technology was always a passion of mine. And so when I had an opportunity to kind of pivot, switch gears, I looked at going to a technical college. And at that time, I went for computer networking. So that kind of segued me to, getting, the knowledge, and kind of in those type of colleges, they also had that job placement. So let's say about halfway through that 2 year stint that a recruiter had reached out to me. There was a new company within the area. At that time, she was like, a new call center for an ISP, and I had no clue what ISP even meant. For those that don't know, it's Internet Service Provider. And, I applied, ended up getting the position. So my first position in the communication industry was within technical support. I think I was a high speed data specialist. And I was that person, if you had broadband cable, your internet wasn't working, or playing video games, the speeds were slow, or email wasn't working, you had to call in. I was that guy on the other end of the phone helping you with your issues. So that's kind of how I got started in the communications industry.
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, that transition that you went through is similar to my story. Starting off in the college and realizing that what I need at the time I could go to trade school for.
Mm-hmm.
And also what they get you is with that job placement, because everybody, the whole point of going to school is to get a job when you come out, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, that job placement is really really enticing, especially if it's something that you actually like doing and something that you're passionate about. So
Right.
what are some of those key skills and knowledge that you gained from that initial role?
So I think just like with most call centers, there's going to be some extensive training. They teach you things regarding, customer service, how to de-escalate customers. So I would say some of the key skills that I gained were like things like patience, being empathetic. Because at the end of the day, we all have had services that we pay for. When they're not working, we got an attitude. So we're calling people up when our things fixed, not now, but right now. So it really gave me a sense of, how things was on the other side, kind of as being a consumer versus, being in that position to help others. And I understood that when they called in, the reason for their frustration. So I didn't never really let that get to me. I was still able to work through, customers that were frustrated and kind of turn things around. Um, so I would say patience, being empathetic, but then it also kind of gave me the ability to learn how to troubleshoot things. It gave me the ability to learn a little bit about the broadband technology, fixing
Mhm.
emails, basic things like DNS and really how to multitask, because I've never really had a job like that. I think I had a couple fast food positions prior to that. So I never really had a job within the call center where you have to talk to a customer and you have to type stuff on a computer, click here for this and that tool. So kind of gave me that ability to learn how to multitask, talking to a customer, but you have to do things kind of in the background simultaneously. So those are some key skills I would say that I gained.
That's awesome. It sort of set you up for success, and moving and advancing through your career. Those are some of those key foundational skills, right? To get started in any career, but especially in something like communication. So that was pretty cool.
Mhm.
Uh, let's talk about. Let's move a little bit further in your career past the first one. Uh,
Okay.
Talk to me about some of the major milestones and transitions in your career.
Hmm. Major milestones. Whew, I got a lot. Um,
Yeah,
I
remember, we're only a 45-minute program ish.
got you. So right. So let me think. So when I think about some key ones, so I'll go back to, for me, I think my path was decided pretty early on. When I went to school, I decided that, I wanted to eventually be an engineer. Um, so when I found out about, the ISP and I got the job, found out they had a network operations center. So kind of where I am today was kind of a goal I set kind of when I started the company. But when I started, I was kind of more interested in going this technical route. So, my goal was to progress from high speed data specialist to eventually be an engineer in the network operations center. So I think within that first year, it kind of started off with me kind of getting comfortable within the position, which, I often refer to like when you're driving, you get a new car, you learn how to drive, your seat is straight up, you got your hands on both wheels, you're like locked in. When you got somebody with you, you got your new car, but as you drive, you get comfortable. And next thing you know, you got one hand on the wheel, your seat is leaned back a little bit. So you start getting that comfort level. And I think that's what happened kind of after that first year is where now I was just flying through calls. Things were easy. I was able to quickly identify customers' issues, get them on and off the phone. Everybody was happy. And what ended up happening was the company eventually started finding ways to measure, individual performance. And with doing that, they created what was called a scorecard, which was various metrics that involved, how you handled the call, quality, of the call. And it was several different metrics, and they kind of combined those to like a 5 point scale, and they called it a scorecard. So after that was introduced, they started having like team of the months or employee of the month, and I was fortunate enough to be rewarded with the very first employee of the month award that they had. So I'll be
Nice.
honest. Yeah, so I'll be honest. When I got it, it was, I felt like my swag was on 1,000. Uh,
As it
you
should
get,
be.
yeah, so you get to attend the luncheon. They put your picture up for everybody to see. They send out an email blast, and I'm feeling good. So I'm like, man. So I think that alone really brought out my competitive spirit because I've always kind of been a competitive person and not really from other competition, but a lot of times I compete with myself to see, if I can continue to get better at whatever I'm involved in. So, you know, as I continue to do that, and when I think about, how my career path shifted, I had a great leader at the time, and we would have these things that they called one-on-ones, kind of that time where you have 30 minutes to an hour with just you and your supervisor, and they go over your performance. And I remember him telling me, because I was the person, after I got that recognition and got good at what I was doing as new people came to the company on the team, he would pair them with me, or if anybody on the team was struggling with anything and they needed some additional help, showing them, he would pair me with them. So he kind of told me, he was like, I think you have some great leadership qualities. And he was like, I can actually see you being a supervisor. And I kind of smile every time I think about it because when he told me this, I just remember kind of laughing, not externally, but in my head, I'm like, hold on. Because me knowing some of my coworkers at the time
Yeah.
and, some of the personalities, some of the things that they were doing that the supervisor may not have known, I'm like, I would be the person that's responsible for these people. So I was like, oh, not interested. So that was a quick no for me. I told him, I was just like, that's nothing I've really ever been interested in doing. I was having individual success. I was, kind of enjoying just being responsible for me and me only.
Right.
So I think, as time progressed, we continued to have those type of meetings over the time. I'll be honest, like one of the deciding factors that kind of persuaded me was, he compared, what I was making at that time hourly to the salary range of a supervisor, what a supervisor makes. And I'm like, okay, I got bills.
Right.
So,
Right.
so
Yeah.
at the time, I was married. I had three at the time. I believe I had three small children and just recently bought a house. So I'm thinking, no, this might be a good path for me. But I still had those reservations. So I think over time we continued to have those conversations, and I started asking more questions, which I think a lot of people should do when you have those opportunities with your leader, especially when it relates to your career path or progression. That he would tell me, some of the pros and cons and how he handles certain situations. And that kind of lasted, over time. And I think eventually where the turning point for me was as the company continued to grow. And a lot of people know, like, if you're in a call center environment, there's extensive training. So they're having these big training classes. And the first part of training, HR goes over certain things. And then you have that part in training where the person is getting on the phone, actually talking to customers. And they would have what was called a nesting coach. So that
Yeah.
nesting coach would be the person that's right alongside that person to kind of listen in on the call. So you call the places, you hear person you're talking to, asking somebody else questions. A lot of times it's that resource or that nesting coach. So there was a special project that they had, and I was able to apply and be a part of that special project. So when I did that, I just remembered the first class that we had, um, the ratio for nesting coach to new hire was like 3-1. But for some reason, the people that were supposed to be assigned to me, they didn't show to new hire class. So I was the only nesting coach that didn't have any people assigned to them. So what they did was made me a floater. So I was kind of going around helping wherever things were needed, presenting things in the class. And at the end of that training, they would have these awards. So they give awards for various things to the new hires. And then they had one award that they would give to the nesting coach. And I just so happened I won the award for that. Even though I didn't have a team, I made that much of an impact. Just wow. I was helping, keeping things light because I had a joking personality. So I keep things light but productive. So I got that award, and it kind of solidified to me that, even leading people, that I still have the ability to obtain that individual success. So fast forward, I did that for several more training classes, and by that time, with the company growing, with the amount of employees, they needed leadership. So they started hiring for supervisors. I applied for that, and that's kind of how I segued to becoming within leadership.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's, you already tapped into it a little bit, offering advice of what to do and like having conversations with your supervisor. But, early in your career, what did you learn that would be helpful for a new leader? Like you said that, your personality showed a little bit more as a leader. So what is some other advice you got for new leaders?
Man, a lot of them. But I would say a key one that I learned, and that I feel like that's still important to this day, is really just building a rapport with your direct reports. I think it's the key to effectively being able to communicate with them. Every conversation can't always be about business. It's good to kind of understand some of the things that some of your employees may be interested in, and those are some things that you can discuss in a one-on-one, or things that you actually can observe, because a lot of times, employees, getting back from the weekend, everybody's kind of talking about what they did over the weekend. You're hearing certain things. Those can be conversations that you can bring up with your direct reports, and that kind of helps build those relationships. And through that, I feel like you can find ways to motivate people individually, because I don't feel like you can't communicate with everybody exactly the same way. There's different ways, there's different things that motivate people individually. So I think you really have to build that rapport with them, that relationship with them, to really understand, and you both come to a common ground. And I think I've done a good job at that, with the people that's reported to me. And I would say, just kind of expanding on that, I was fortunate early on, the majority of my career, to really have some great leaders that I reported to, that were able to help me with my personal development and having discussions around my career growth, which led me to kind of pursue, I wanted to do that technical path as an engineer before I became into leadership. So, some of the leaders that I had kind of encouraged me to still take that approach, but within the leadership realm. So I would always, as I progressed within leadership, follow that technical path. So my next position from residential would be to manage a specialized team that supported networking and firewalls. And from there, I went to small business, more mom and pop stores with, smaller networks. And then that led me to supporting a specialized team. So I still followed that same path from a leadership perspective until I got to the Network Operations Center, which ultimately was my goal, to be over. So instead of being an engineer in the Network Operations Center, I told myself I want to be the manager of that team. So I think, that was a goal that I was able to accomplish. And we talked about Will earlier, so shout out to Will, because he was actually one of the engineers on that team back then. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, now I'm correct connecting threads, who's working with who and, those things. But that is some really good, insightful things you talked about as far as, just the communication and, those leadership skills are like, metrics don't capture those things, but that's,
exactly,
your influence on the team makes a great deal if that team wants to work with you or not. So that's, that's phenomenal advice that you handed out there. So another one to inspire. Do you got any tips for anyone aspiring to be a leader in the communications industry?
yeah. So I think definitely invest in time to understand like the technology, what your team is responsible for supporting. I think you can't always know the very intricate details, but I think really having a high level understanding um, is definitely helpful. And one of the things I would say is probably one of the most important things, at least that how I value it is, as a leader, I think you play a critical role in the success of your direct reports. And kind of speaking to what I talked to earlier, had it not been for my supervisor at that time, I feel like my career path to this day could have been different,
Yeah.
or it could have potentially led to where I'm at now. But I think you have the ability, really, it should be taken serious, like the influence that you have to give that guidance, to be able to honestly and accurately assess, your people's performance is key to their success. So I think it's definitely been a thing that I've taken seriously, that I've tried to inspire. I have a lot of people that's reporting to me, and not to take anything away from them, because I think based on each individual, everybody is responsible for their path to success. But I feel like, I've been able to give guidance to a lot of people. I see people that once reported to me that moved on to other positions or even other companies. It gives me, a great pride of accomplishment that I was able to at least help people to set them up for success, which I think is a key responsibility for any leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that communication part is absolutely crucial in development of your own personal development, but also developing others. And,
Absolutely.
not necessarily, every day, like, yes, we all have work to do, we all have daily tasks, but talking about, what direction you want to go in your career, like, letting them know, let your direct reports know, like, what skills you see in them, uh,
Hmm.
can be inspiring, right? Because they're not just in their own mind thinking about, well, I have this idea and this path in mind, but you can see, like, as they are working for you, those skills that could propel them on a different path that they can have equal or greater success.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So now I want you to put on your prediction hat here.
Uh-oh.
So, changing it up a little bit,
Okay.
what are your predictions for the future of the industry?
All right, let me get out my crystal ball.
Yeah.
So, so I think this one is, to me, when I think about that, this one is real simple, and I think everybody kind of sees how things are shifting when you talk about technology. I would say my predictions for the future is I predict to see a lot of trends in the use of AI or artificial intelligence.
Okay.
I think you see that a lot, from devices that we use personally, but I think from a company standpoint, especially in the communications industry, you'll start to see a lot more use of AI technology with companies that are already doing it. You'll start seeing a lot of efforts and moving towards that direction for companies that may not be using it at this time. And I think, when you think AI, and I've had debates with people, I think, and I see both sides. And I think, how I
Okay.
look at things is when people think about AI, a lot of people think of kind of the negative impact it can have on the workforce. AI, you can lose jobs. And, you know, I look at it different. I think I look at AI as an additional tool. I think a lot of companies are looking to use AI to increase efficiency, accuracy. I think there always will be kind of that human element, even within AI. I think, that goes hand in hand. But I think kind of in the environment that I'm in, when you think about a network operations center with AI, if there's an outage, we're monitoring the network and doing surveillance on the network. AI can be the difference of operator seeing 100 alarms for a single event or one alarm. So it gives you the
Okay.
ability to kind of clear out the noise. And by doing so, you're able to kind of isolate a lot quickly, what's the root cause of that event. By doing so, you're able to engage, put techs or construction people, if it's a fiber event, get people on site quicker, which the end result of that is if you can fix something faster after you identify it a lot quicker, you're getting services back up. And I think that's the ultimate goal. I think tools like that utilize AI to do those things have a huge upside. And I think you'll start to see a lot of companies going in that direction using those type of tools.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a lot of different things there because, yes, there's this fear that is going to take our jobs and whatnot. But I agree with you, and there still needs to be a human element involved with it, and it's not necessarily like AI shouldn't be a tool to replace jobs and to replace humans. It should be a tool used to enhance the workforce, the users of the tool. So
Mhm.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense, for, and like the example you mentioned, responding to alerts faster and getting the customers services back up and running in X amount of time flat, so a lot less than what it is probably currently.
Absolutely.
So, it 100% makes sense. That's actually a really good prediction because, we're living in it right now and, we're trying to get those standards established and, figure out that balance of what does AI does and what do we need the humans do. And there's going to be lots of growth and opportunity in the future for that as well. So,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah, I don't think
stay
it's going anywhere anytime soon. So I think you'll start to see that definitely grow.
yeah, it's definitely out of the bag and is not going back in. So,
Hmm. For sure.
all right. So once again, now that I have your prediction, I'm placing bets in Las Vegas. Don't worry, I'll get you in on it. When it hits.
Right.
Um, but changing it up again. So talk to me about how you got involved with NAMIC. Like, especially you being down there in Louisville. There's, you're part of a chapter here in St. Louis. So how did you get involved?
Yeah, and that's a good point because my situation is rather unique. Um, so when I first got introduced to NAMIC by a visitor from our other network operations center, I think we were in a training, and I think just conversating outside of that, and he just asked me if I even knew anything about NAMIC and never heard of it, had no clue what it was, and kind of told me a little bit about it, kind of how he's participated in different events, and that it's something that you can join for free through the company, and that there was allocated budget, to be able to do certain things. So I looked into it. I figured it out. How to join it. It was free. And then kind of along the way with joining NAMIC, I kind of learned more about the business resource groups that we had in the company. And for those that don't know, business resource groups. Business resource groups. If you don't know what those are, definitely check with your human resources or your leadership team to see if those type of groups exist, which are smaller, specialized groups. And I think one of the groups I joined was the multicultural, but there is multiple different groups that you can join, depending on the things that you're interested in. Within those groups, kind of like name it, you have the ability to get certain newsletters or attend webinars where they have guest speakers talking about various topics, which were always pretty interesting. People that were in the field, that were accomplished people that really giving motivational talks. So I thought that was cool. So really, when I started off with NAMIC, I started kind of just as a member, just kind of sitting back. And unfortunately, like you mentioned, for me being in Louisville, and then the closest chapter, unfortunately, they didn't have a chapter in my area. So the closest chapter was a St. Louis chapter, but geographically, St. Louis is 4 hours away. So when they were having in-person events, at the time, it just wasn't feasible for me to drive 4 hours to attend a 1 hour event and come back home. And they didn't really have virtual wasn't really a thing. Like virtual kind of became a thing post COVID. So I kind of joined right before COVID hit. So, that's kind of the extent of what my participation was. Now, they did end up having a conference, but it was virtual. That conference, which was normally in person, had to be virtual due to COVID around that time. So I joined in and I was just really impressed by, the speakers that they had. I think they had, the CEO of Ebony magazine at the time, and just different communications companies like MSNBC, like their head people were actually speaking in these sessions that they had. So NAMIC was I kind of learned that NAMIC is a very big deal. They have chapters across all the major cities, and I kind of did my research. So how I got in deeply involved and kind of which led me to the position that I'm in now as being the vice president of the chapter is they have what's called a leadership seminar. And if you're not aware, they also have mentorship programs. So definitely look into those if those are things that you're interested in. But they had a leadership seminar and I attended. Man, it was like, over my tenure, I've had, there's always leadership trainings. Anybody that's kind of in management, you understand there's trainings every year that you have to require. And a lot of those are mainly about fundamental things and different ways of doing things, whether it's coaching or communicating. But the NAMIC leadership seminar that I attended really felt like it was about my individual growth. Now, there were things that they taught that I can use in my day to day as being a leader or managing a team. But there were also things that connected some dots for me individually for my personal career growth that I really took away. Things like networking, things like the value of mentorship. So those are some key things that I took away. And in addition, like with this leadership seminar, like you are in this training with people in these other communications companies like ESPN, Disney, Warner Brothers. So you're meeting people from other companies. You're also meeting people from within your own company that I probably would have never had the opportunity to meet. So you're able to expand your network, build those contacts and different resources, and just get experience and knowledge. And then the type of people that they had training these classes were amazing, very engaging. People that had been in the industry that really had a host of knowledge that they were able to share. And I was excited. It was a week. I think it was either a week or 2 week training. It might have just been a week. And to this day, I still keep in touch with some of the people that are part of my leadership cohorts from that class. But what led me to the position I'm in now was after the training, I was so excited. I felt like I took a lot away from it. So I reached out to the people running the training within NAMIC, and I asked them, post training, like, can I schedule a call? I just want to give you guys some feedback on what I thought about the training. And really, at that time, when I was managing the engineers, one of the key functions we had within the department was all training, whether it was new hire, up training, would come from my team of engineers. So I kind of had that passion for up training and training. So when I met with them, I was like, I kind of want to know a little bit about the behind the scenes. Like, how did y'all put this together? What was the thought process? What was the behind the scenes? Like, I'm always been somebody that's kind of focused on not what you put in front of me, but what it took for things to kind of transpire. So I was asking a lot of those questions, and I just told them straight up, how else can I be involved? Like, I wanted to be a part of that because I felt like it was very instrumental and something I really wanted to be a part of. And they kind of told me at the time the St. Louis chapter had been inactive since right before COVID for some years. So like, well, definitely want to get the St. Louis chapter, which I was a member of at the time. So, you know, with that, they saw opportunity in me to kind of help spin that chapter back up. And that's kind of what we ended up doing for that first year. Of course, I started as vice president. Justin was our president. Tanya was our treasurer. And Brinsley was our secretary. That first year, we kind of fumbled our way through some things. And one of the things I can say that was a great takeaway for me was being able to reach out to some of those other chapter leaders, like within NAMIC, Florida, Atlanta chapters, Philly chapters, and kind of building those relationships with some of those people. And they were just, super helpful. Everybody was always down to earth, ready to just dive in and help whatever you need, share some knowledge, and genuinely, wanted you to be successful and wanted to help you. So, I thought that was an amazing experience. And, in that first year, we had some events, we figured it out. And then by the second year, we figured out kind of what some of our gaps was and how we can spread out the workload, how we can extend, our chapter committee to having different legs within the chapter, whether as a membership person, we had a planning committee, which I'm a head of for this year. So I put together an awesome team, which you are a part of.
Yeah.
And then we had a communications chair that started this year as well. So we're able to kind of put some things together, man. We really assembled a great team, and everybody's committed to putting some programming together, putting some quality networking events together for the chapter members to be able to attend and be a part, as well as some community events that we have coming up. So that's kind of the short story of how I got involved with NAMIC, and still are involved. Will be involved for some time.
That's awesome. Like your journey, just progressing, and that passion for helping out other individuals and reaching out. Like little do people know, like reaching out to strangers. Well, might not be complete strangers, but people that are outside your region, because they're equally as passionate and want to help you. So always asking for help is, absolutely a good move there. And I'm glad to be a part of this chapter in St. Louis.
Sure.
I have to give you shout out to you for, um, you know, getting me involved, and kind of helping mold me as I was part of your committee and being part of the board and stuff. So you know hopefully the St. Louis chapter continues to grow, continue to do things, and I mean you'll be right there a part of it too, in an advisory role, if not vice president.
Exactly. And shout out to DJ and Cynthia as well. I want to make sure we acknowledge them. I think we covered everybody else. And Chris is over our membership, so excellent team.
Yeah, absolutely. The what we accomplished this year is absolutely magnificent, and we got to give kudos to you and Justin for leading us to greener pastures.
For sure. We got a lot more coming, so definitely make sure everybody taps in with. We're gonna finish the year strong. We got some big things coming up for sure.
Well, Elgin, thank you for your time today. Any last words before I let you go?
Not, you know what? Not really. I appreciate everybody for joining and tapping in. This is our first one. Hopefully, it was insightful. look forward, because this will be a series. So I'm not gonna release the cat out the bag on who the next person is, but they know who they are. We have them lined up. More to come, and we're also open to feedback. If there's anything in particular, definitely comment, hit up the LinkedIn page. We have the internal chat. There's ways that people can get a hold of us. Have the email address as well. So we're always open to feedback. We did a survey earlier this year, and we're committed to putting some programming that satisfies the needs of our chapter members on what they want. And we got some things coming down the pipe. So we just appreciate everybody's support, continued support. Thank you for all the other chapters within NAMIC that have reached out to try to partner with us on other events. Shout out to WIC as well, some partnerships, and just the community peoples and everybody that's kind of supported the things that we do. We appreciate it. You guys know who you are. So we thank you for all your support and look forward to what we can do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elgin, for your time. And we will be in contact, in the future. So
my pleasure.
Before I close today's episode, a little bit of house business. I want to talk about our next event for NAMIC St. Louis. It is the Midtown Mixer, which is going to be held at the Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Eastern Missouri, located at 501 North Grand Boulevard in Midtown. The event is going to be from 5 to 7 p.m. So that's our next one, is going to be a little bit of a social gathering in the beginning, and then we going to do a little presentation about opportunities to help big brothers and big sisters and the community of Eastern Missouri. So that's our next event coming up. Don't forget about the conference. The National NAMIC Conference is coming up in October as well. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and found it insightful. With over 15 chapters nationwide, NAMIC is passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the communications industry. With a wide range of professional development opportunities, networking events, and leadership programs, NAMIC is dedicated to empowering multi-ethnicities, diversity in the media and communication industry. If you want to sign up, go to namic.com and click on Join Now to become a member. You can also find our chapter, NAMIC St. Louis, on LinkedIn and on the internet. That's all we have for you today. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.